This is Football Night in America, served by Applebee's.
Welcome into the FNIA podcast. We are served by Applebee's. You know, the Hall of Famer, Coach Dungy, right there in the middle. Hot Rod, Rodney Harrison, two-time Super Bowl champion, terrific golfer as well. He may get back to that now that we have hit the offseason. Who does? And fellas, we have some coaching news here. Let's start with Ben Johnson, hired as the head coach of the Chicago Bears, a team you know well. Rodney, your initial thoughts on this hire?
I love it, and I talked about this before. I think he walks in with an incredible amount of credibility. I mean, you think about what he did with Jared Goff. He took this guy from being traded all the way this year to have an MVP consideration. I think this is the right fit, coach, and I think he's the right leader for these guys.
Yeah, I was actually talking with Kevin Warren, the president of the Bears, on Sunday morning before our game, and they were narrowing it down, and he told me how impressed he was with Ben Johnson. And I just said, Kevin, the thing you've got to do is make sure that whoever you hire has the same vision for how to do it as you have. And he seemed to indicate that was the thing with Ben Johnson. Yes, smart. Yes, great offensive mind, but the way they wanted to build it is what Ben Johnson's all about. So I think it's going to be a great fit.
And, Coach, I agree with you. And the thing is, their biggest challenge in building is first taking care of that offensive line. And that's probably the most important piece, getting that offensive line. And that's the thing that separated Detroit from a lot of other teams, having that veteran offensive line, being able to run the football, being able to utilize the play action pass. So now he comes into a situation where they don't have a great offensive line. They're not very big. They're not very physical on the offensive side. So they're going to have to do a great job of getting the right people in there, coach. The big offensive lineman, maybe another explosive running back, and just surrounding Caleb with some more weapons.
I agree, and I think they're going to do that. Everybody will look at Ben Johnson and say, oh, they put up all those points and they threw the ball. Yes, they did, but they ran the ball as well as anybody in the National Football League. And so to have a coach with that mindset to work with your young quarterback, I think that's going to be great.
And you think about him too, Coach, as far as the division. I mean, he's very familiar with the division, so that gives them a leg up already because he knows the ins and outs of Dan Campbell. He knows how he thinks in critical moments, but he's also very familiar with the Green Bay Packers and the Minnesota Vikings. So, I just think this is a home run. You saw Caleb talking about him, how excited Caleb was about Coach Johnson coming in there, Jack. I just think this is the right move to make.
It takes some courage walking into the North. I mean, like you said, he knows it well, but I mean, there is a lot of good teams in the North right now. Good quarterback play. It's you gotta factor that into the decision, coach, when you're making that, because you're going to be expected to win the division with all the hype and knowing that you have a number one overall pick at quarterback, right?
No doubt, he knows how tough the division is, but Chicago has done a good job. If you like Caleb Williams, if you're Ben Johnson and you like that, you know that they put some pieces around him. They've got young receivers. They've got some good running backs. They've got weaponry around him, and they're going to be able to build. So, yeah, it's a challenge, but I think he understands the landscape.
Yeah. All right, we'll see how it goes. Lou Anarumo, we knew that this would not take long. The Bengals defensive coordinator, you knew he'd be going through the interview process. He'd get offers, and there he went. He's off to the Colts. Your Indianapolis Colts coach. Your thoughts on this hire?
As a former Colt, I am excited. I watched Lou Anarumo. We had many of their games. We talked to him before games. We saw how his players related to him, Rodney. I think this is a win for the Colts, and I'm not sure what happened in Cincinnati, but moving forward, I think Coach Lou's going to do a great job there.
I agree with you, Coach, and I just love him. I mean, he's veteran defensive coordinator, and they got some talent on the defensive side of the ball. You start looking at guys like E.J. Speed, DeForest Buckner, Latu, those guys. I mean, they have some talent and something that he can build around. I thought he got a raw deal out in Cincinnati. I thought for the last how many ever years we've covered this guy in Cincinnati, I thought he's done a really great job. He used to come over there and talk to us, have conversations, and tell us exactly what he was thinking. He's a deep thinker. He's very creative. I like this. I think this is a home run, and now he's got some guys he can work with. I think he's going to be fantastic, Jack.
Yeah, he was up there with Spags for one of the longest tenured defensive coordinators, 5-6 years that he had been with the Bengals. So he had that
Yep.
ability to build those relationships. And I keep hearing Al Golden is who they're going to go after. And he was, of course, coaching in the national championship game with Notre Dame. He's done an outstanding job with Notre Dame's defense. So I could see what they're thinking. He was the linebacker coach during their run to the Super Bowl a few years ago. So I think that's where the Bengals are leaning. And it would make sense that they haven't made a hire yet if that's where they're leaning.
Yeah. No, I agree. I just thought Coach Anarumo was fantastic. And when you go to Super Bowls and you win and you keep that continuity, then all of a sudden you decide to go in another direction. I'm not sure how that works or what the process is, but as I say, I am very happy for the Colts.
Yeah. How about your Patriots, Rod? Josh McDaniels, the old offensive coordinator. He's won a Super Bowl or two, and there he goes back with Braves as the boss man.
Oh, I'm excited about Josh. Josh is a good person, man, and he's smart. One thing I like about him, he's an extremely patient guy, but he's patient to a certain degree. He's gonna push Drake May, just like I saw him push Tom. He's gonna challenge this guy, and you know what? He's familiar. He understands the Patriots culture. He understands Mike Vrabel. I mean, they're really good friends, and he understands the craft and how everything goes down. I think this is perfect. Now, Drake May really has an advantage because he has an experienced guy like Josh that understands and really can get him to the next level. Because, Coach, when I saw Drake, I didn't think he was as good as he was. You told me that, hey, I like this kid. He's a smart kid. He does the right things. He works hard. And I kept saying, maybe they need to take a wide receiver. No, you were spot on with that pick. He's going to be a good football player.
He is, and he's a sponge. He loves football, and he's going to sit right next to Josh, and he's going to learn. I think it's going to be a great move. The other thing I like about it, Rodney, is everybody in that building now is going to be on the same page. Offensively, defensively, they know what Coach Vrabel wants. They know the style of play, and there's not going to be, well, one side's doing this, the other side's doing this. They're going to be together and unified.
I like it. Let's get to a couple of teams talking the divisional round of the playoffs that had really good seasons.
Hey, Jack, let me interrupt you 1 second. The one thing I wanted to mention was Coach Aaron Glenn. And Coach, this is why people don't take the Jets serious. You bring this guy in. He's a former player. He played 15 years in the league. He was, a 12th or 14th pick overall, whatever he was. And you let this guy walk out the door. You talk about Aaron Glenn. He is a leader of men. You always talk about if you're going to hire somebody, make sure they can lead. And I don't know why the Jets would let this guy walk. Now, if I'm the New Orleans Saints, I'm jumping all over Aaron Glenn. I just want to say that. I just think that he's going to be a good coach. And you always talk about these guys, Coach. So yeah. I'm excited for the opportunity.
We have been around. We've had the Lions a few times. We've seen, again, how their players respond to him. And when you look, was the stat, Jack? 18 or 19 guys on IR, and you still put a playoff defense together. Amazing.
Yeah. I think it was like 12 or 13 just on defense alone that were on IR group. And then they had Amik Robertson who got hurt at the end of the year when he was starting to, it went from a nobody to playing really well for them.
But how do you let him walk out the door?
Yeah. Are you talking about for the Lions? Well, or are you talking about for the Jets once they interviewed him?
I was talking about the Jets once they interviewed him. Don't let him leave, man. I mean, this is the coach that you want. You have a defense that needs a different energy. You need a different perspective, and he can provide that. He's got love for the New York Jets, and he's a very passionate coach. He's a deep thinker. I just think this is the right move for the Jets. I don't know why you would let him walk out the door.
He's getting one of these jobs, right, Coach? I mean, do you feel like one of these jobs makes the most sense for him? You think he's getting one of them, right?
I would have to think. I would have thought the Jets or New Orleans. He had ties. He coached in New Orleans. He played for the Jets. This is the guy that, he's going to end up somewhere, and it kind of looks like New Orleans now.
Yeah. The pieces are starting to fall a little bit with Ben heading to Chicago, so we'll see where the rest might come down. The Lions and the Ravens, really good seasons, and they're going to sit there in the offseason and go, man, we felt like we could have had this thing. As you look at these two and the way they kind of self-destructed a little bit in the divisional round, Rod, I'll start with you. What happened to these two squads that looked pretty high-flying throughout the year?
Hey, Jack, I'm not going to even focus on the big picture. I'm going to focus on one guy, and I'm going to focus on Mark Andrews. And I know a lot of people they're trying to blame Mark Andrews because I've been in a situation like that. I had the helmet catch caught on me, and that is devastating because you feel like you let your team down. You feel like you let an entire organization down, entire city, the Baltimore nation, the Patriot nation when you miss a play like that. And my point to him would be, Mark, you're a big reason why the team has had so much success. Don't blame yourself. Continue to work hard. Continue to be a leader. Continue to get better at the things that you need to get better at. But this is definitely not his fault. Yeah, could he have made a couple more plays? Absolutely. But if I'm Mark Andrews, you got to walk around with your head high, knowing that you're a great player and you're going to continue to make plays, Coach.
Yeah, Rodney, I look at these playoff moments and I think back to you guys in the early 2000s, the New England Patriots, and everybody would say, well, when you get to the playoffs, you have to elevate your game. You have to do more. And what you guys showed me is no, you don't. You just have to be able to play your standard, your style in the big moments, in the clutch. And to me, that is what Detroit and Baltimore did not do. Baltimore had not turned the ball over all year. And all of a sudden, you had 3 turnovers in that game. Detroit, Jahmyr Gibbs is running for 10 yards a carry, and you're storming up and down the field. But you get in the red zone, quarterback sack, fumble, interception, quarterback throws a pick six, things you haven't done all year. They just needed to be able to play their game in the big moments, and unfortunately, they didn't do it.
Coach, one thing that you always say that you've been saying since I've been with you, for 16 years, you always say you don't have to do things extraordinarily, but you have to do the ordinary things extraordinary. And that really got me focused over the years of just really doing the simple things at a really high level all the time. And when you start doing that, things just happen, things just click, and things fall in place. And that's basically the way we played with the Patriots. We tried to do all the simple things really, really well. And that's something that you said that I will always keep with me.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, and you look at those games, and that's what happened. Lamar Jackson, it's a bad snap. He gets it, and instead of just saying, okay, the play's over, I'm going to try to make something happen, fumble, it goes the other way. Lions game, they're doing a lot of things well, but just holding on to the football, not turning it over, not giving the other team opportunities. They'll look back and they'll say, man, we blew it. And that's the worst feeling. If a team beats you in the playoffs, okay, you tip your hat to them. But when you say, gosh, we didn't play our game and we lost, those are hard ones.
Yeah. Did they just run out of guys defensively? Like when you looked at Detroit, I know they got hit by all those injuries. You mentioned it. Amik Robertson gets hurt in that game. He took that shot on the arm, and then he's walking off the field. You're going, he was the reinforcements that was playing, better than you would have even expected. And you got to go stop Jaden Daniels. And they couldn't do it. I mean, they just could not get off the field defensively. Is that what it was? They just ran out of guys?
I believe I just think they got tired over the course of a year. When you have all these injuries, they wear on you mentally, emotionally, physically, they wear on you. And it's just something that you have to deal with.
And I think Aaron Glenn got into that game and said, you know what? I don't have enough coverage guys now. I can't match up with these guys. So I'm going to have to bring more pressure and blitz and get it out of this quarterback's hand. And Jaden Daniels handled that blitz. Every time he saw it, he got the quick screens out. He got rid of the ball. He didn't let the blitz get to him. And they didn't have the coverage guys to handle him.
It's interesting because he's really not a rookie the way he plays. But defensive coordinators tend to call the game like he is a rookie, and they blitz him and they bring all these things his way, and he just sits there and thank you very much, thank you very much. I mean, how many times have we seen it now? Tampa, Todd Bowles was bringing some heat after him. He did the same thing. It's like he just does not play the game like a rookie, Rod. He just doesn't.
And it's not a mistake that he's playing so well in critical moments. This is who he is. And that's the thing that really separates him from everybody else. Coach, you put me on CJ Stroud and you let me know last year how great he was before he even stepped foot on the field. And then you add this kid, he's better, plus he can run. So every time he's on the field, he's the best athlete on the field. He's the most composed. This is something that really is actually freaks me out because I've never seen a rookie that calm. And at times, I didn't even see Tom Brady that calm. You know, Tom would be going crazy, yelling and screaming, and in a sense, almost panicking. And this kid, you never see him raise his voice. You never see him up and down. You just see him just like that. It's pretty remarkable. Coach, you coach Peyton Manning. Can you say the same thing about Peyton Manning?
No, he was not like that. I think the greatest pictures in watching these playoff games is when the Washington defense would be out there and they just focus him on the bench and he's like this. Just like, okay, whenever I get the ball back, it doesn't matter. They may score a field goal, they may score a touchdown, but you know what? When we get the ball back, we're going to score and we're fine. And he's not over there going through the Polaroids and all that. He's just, okay, coach, I got you. And that rubs off on you. When you look at that as a teammate, you know, Rod, you see that and you say, hey, all I got to do is get the ball back from my guy. He's going to do it.
Coach, that is huge. When you as a player, a veteran player, or just a player on that team, you don't have to worry about your quarterback position. Yep. You know you got a rookie playing quarterback, but I'm not even thinking about him. I'm just focusing on what I have to focus on, and it just makes life better for everyone. I mean, this kid has been amazing, and when he steps on the field on Sunday, he'll be the best player on the field.
Yeah. When we had them, we did 2 of their games. And it didn't matter who we talked to. You could talk to defensive players. They wanted to talk about the quarterback. I talked to the offensive line coach, and he's telling me how he's sitting with Jaden Daniels going over protections at 5:30 in the morning. And, you know, everybody talked about the quarterback, from the janitor to Doug Williams. And I think that says a lot.
And I'll tell you this, Coach, you always talk about these young players having a lot of experience in college. But it's not just the playing experience. It's the experience of how do you deal with people? Yeah. How do you interact with professionals? How do you interact with your teammates, coaches, the fans, all those different things? He has shown a level of humility that I've just never seen in a young quarterback. For all the stardom and everything that comes his way, he is so humble and so smooth. I got to give a lot of props to his parents for raising this young man the right way, because he is just fantastic.
Yeah. And we've talked about this. You know, we had Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and Ben Roethlisberger and, you know, sort of this old guard of quarterbacks. We're at the point now, all 4 remaining quarterbacks are pure dual threats, right? I mean, they can run and they can beat you that way. They can throw and they can beat you that way. And so it's at that point now with the league where if you don't have one of these guys, you're not going to be in the top 4. And I think we've kind of hit that point, and this year's proof of that. Stafford was the last remaining of those, and he was close, but ultimately they're eliminated now. Do you guys see it that way too, Coach?
Absolutely. And then look who got knocked out. Lamar Jackson, CJ Stroud, you know, people that could move around. And so, unless you're that special something, that Matthew Stafford old school, if you can't move and threaten the defenses now, it's very difficult. Yeah.
And you talk about Ben Johnson. That was one of the things that he said. He said Caleb was a really good athlete that really attracted him to the Chicago Bears. The fact that Caleb could move around, he can do some things, he can create. That just helps that offense becomes more creative.
Mm-hmm. Cool too to see Bills Mafia donating all this money to Mark Andrews and his favorite charity. It's like these are the most unique people on the planet, man. A guy drops a pass and it's like they're the coolest people and they go do it. I remember they did it with Andy Dalton and his charity back in the day when they eliminated somebody and got them into the playoffs. It's like they're just pure souls up there. So a little shout out to Bills Mafia as well. Let's go down.
Absolutely.
It's pretty cool to see, Coach. And the Chiefs and the Texans games, there's, of course, a lot of conversation around these 2 calls, and they're both on Patrick Mahomes. He took the one earlier in the game, and they both felt like they came at big moments. The Will Anderson on 3rd down, when he definitely made some contact. How did you guys see this one? Should that have been a 15-yard unnecessary roughness, Coach? I'll start with you, or did you feel like that was a little too far?
No, I'll tell you what. As a defensive coach, I get upset at those calls, but that's the way the rules are structured. And you read the rule book and you read what the referee is being told. Contact to the head or neck area, leading with the helmet first, is a penalty. If you're in doubt, throw the flag. That call against Will Anderson is going to get called 999 times out of 1,000. And we can be upset about it. But I will tell you this, we saw the 8 best teams in the league this year in the divisional round. All their quarterbacks were playing. So the league is on to something. Yeah, I may not like it as a defensive coach and a defensive person, but that's what the league needs. That's what I want to. I want to see Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. So if we have to protect them, great. And defensive players know that. Will Anderson knows that target level has to be below the numbers, and it wasn't that time. So, was it a bad call? That's football in the 2020s. That's the way it's going to be called, Ruh.
Yeah, and Coach Ryan's D'Amico, he has to, when you go into a game like that, knowing that they're going to protect, you have to coach your players a certain way. You have to say, guys, when he's sliding, don't hit him. Just tag him down. If he's close to the sideline, don't try to get a kill shot on him. Just push him out of bounds. These are the things, and there's a list of calls that they could have went over the entire season that showed Patrick Mahomes getting favorable calls. And like Coach said, they're going to protect the quarterbacks. You have to understand, especially Patrick Mahomes, who's the face of the NFL. So it's something that you have to coach, you have to understand. And this week, I guarantee you, Sean McDermott with the Bills, he's going over all those situations as far as Patrick Mahomes. And I don't think you're going to see any questionable calls like that this week.
Rodney, when I coached, and this is 16 years ago now, the rules weren't quite as favorable to the quarterbacks and they weren't protected as much, but you still we used to have scouting reports on officials, and we'd have certain referees, and we would tell our defensive line, you cannot take the extra hit on the quarterback with this guy. He's going to throw, he protects the quarterback. Other guys don't protect the quarterback. So we could have a little bit more leeway, and our defensive linemen knew that. Well, in this day and age, if you want to be a Super Bowl official, referee, you better protect the quarterback because that's what the league is saying. So as I go into it as a defensive lineman, I've got to know that. And it's just, that's football today.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the frustration is sometimes Pat does seem to kind of bait it too. I mean, like I'm thinking about the second where he's running around. He's waiting till the last possible second. Then he kind of ducks down late and he takes not even a big hit, but a hit. And sure enough, here's another 15-yard penalty, or like on the sideline where he's always taking as many steps as he can and then kind of jumping out late. He takes a shot and then he does a big flop, So like that's where it gets frustrating for defenders, is where they want to the quarterback wants to have it both ways, all the protections, and then they want to kind of egg it on late. And Mahomes definitely has been guilty of that at times.
Yeah, they should have been. I'm sorry, Coach. I was going to say they should have been frustrated at their defensive game plan when you let Travis Kelce catch all those passes. I mean, he's coming out. No one's touching him. Nobody's around him. This is Travis Kelce. And he's turning around, catching the ball at 5 or 6 yards, making a guy miss, just big play after big play, and really never any adjustments. It's not like he put one of his safeties on Travis Kelce and said, hey, we're going to play zone around him in the back. We're going to rush 3 guys. We're going to play like a box and one. We're going to take Travis Kelce completely away. When you know that Travis Kelce is their main threat, how do you allow him to come in and have the production that he had? They're not even challenging him. And that's the frustrating part of it. To me, it shouldn't be them yelling and screaming about a couple calls they missed. It should be the game plan or the lack thereof, Coach.
Yeah, I agree with you. That was the disappointing thing to me. And if I had a chance to talk to D'Amico Ryans, that's what I would say. He comes out afterwards and says, well, we're playing against everybody. And then you hear 8 or 10 of his players say the same thing. We're playing against everybody. So you know that phrase had to start from the top. And my problem is, wait a minute. How about, let's stop their best receiver from catching 7 for 121. Let's not let our quarterback get sacked 8 times. Let's not miss a field goal and an extra point and get a field goal blocked. Let's do the things that we need to do to win the game rather than talk about, well, we've got to beat everybody. No, just make our kicks and protect our quarterback.
Thank you.
Do you feel like they got to the point where they had watched the totality of the season and gone, maybe Kelce's not great anymore, and maybe he has lost a step at 35, 36 years old, and we got to defend everybody else. Like, do you think that's what they were thinking going into the game, and then they just got burned by playoff Kelsey? Rod, I mean, you've said that throughout this year.
I would hope not. I would hope not. When you watch the tape, at the end of the day, you see Xavier Worthy and these guys. Yeah, they're younger, they're more athletic. But Travis Kelce, he has the experience. And this is a guy that knows how to get open. He knows in those big moments when it's 3rd down and 5 exactly where he needs to be. So he doesn't have to run a 4-5 in order to do that. It's the experience, it's the knowledge, it's that understanding that he and Patrick Mahomes, they have. And it shows up in the biggest moments of the game. And I just, like you said, Coach, they can complain about a lot of things, but they really need to look at themselves in the mirror because that game plan wasn't very good.
Yeah. When he did the old block and release on the 3rd down and nobody was with him, when he does like he's faking, like he's blocking the DN, I'm like, this play is a decade old, if not older than that. I cannot believe, and the Texans had nobody on him on one of the key 3rd down plays in the game. So,
and nobody's touching him, Jack. When he's coming off the line of scrimmage, Coach, I've been saying this since his entire career that he's really elevated to be this level of tight end. You got to get your hands on him, jam him, slow him down. Yes, he's getting older. He's not the same player, but he's still a really good player, and he can make plays in those critical moments. And it just, you have to pay attention to Travis Kelce. We'll see what the Bills do this week.
They'll pay a little bit more attention to him than Houston did.
I think you're right about that. All right, we'll get into the championship games here in just a second. Let's get to who is eating good in the neighborhood. And this is served by Applebee's. Andy Reid, 11th championship game. So now 7 straight championship game appearances. Coach, give us some perspective.
To me, that is so amazing. You know how tough it is to get there. You played with some great teams and how tough a struggle it was just to get to the AFC Championship game. I coached for 28 years, 4 very good organizations, had 18 playoff teams, some really, really good teams. I made it to the championship game 4 times in my life. These guys have gone 7 straight years, and that just doesn't happen, Rod. You got to tip your hat to the coaching and the direction and the leadership of Andy Reid.
Man, Coach, yeah, just a lot of respect for him. And, when I start looking at the coaches I respect that I competed against, the Belichicks, the Coach Dungys, Andy Reid, competed against him at the Pro Bowl, played against him in the Super Bowl, just really just sitting back as a retired player now, just so proud of Coach Reid and everything that he's accomplished, because for so many years, Coach, they talked about, is he good enough? Can he take this team to the next level? And, they always question him out in Philadelphia. To see him having so much success in Kansas City has been terrific.
Yeah, I agree with you. He took Philly 4 times to the championship game, once to the Super Bowl. Hell, he can't win the big one. Maybe we ought to move on. I think he proved that he can win some big ones here.
And for me, Jack, for me, who's eating good in the neighborhood, I'm going to have to go with the Philadelphia Eagles offensive line. And one guy in particular, they got 3 Pro Bowlers on there, and a lot of guys get credit. But this one guy, I've watched him all year, and I think he's done an excellent job, Coach Mekhi Becton. And I got a chance to walk up to him on the field, and I just looked at him, and he is one of the biggest people I've ever seen in my life. And I just said, Mekhi, man, I said, you had a really good year. And Lane Johnson was standing right there next to him. And I just looked at Lane. I said, man, you guys done a really good job, maturing this guy, just being around him and teaching him. And it's amazing how well he's played this year when you have Lane Johnson, Cam Jurgens, and those guys around him, Landon Dickerson. And this is going to be a good offensive line for a long time, even when Lane Johnson retires. So the Philadelphia Eagles, they're building something special. You saw 287.5 yards rushing games this postseason. That is unheard of, Jack.
It is. Howie Roseman, it's year after year that he builds these teams, and he always seems to build them from the lines out, right? Their defensive line, that group is always tough as heck, deep as heck. Their offensive line, it's like they play old school SEC style football where they're just going to beat you up, and they do it in the NFL. It's got to be hard to do, Coach, but they're the biggest offensive line, and they do it by design.
No, they are. And Rodney mentioned Mekhi Becton. To take a guy who was an offensive tackle, projected to be a blue chip or high draft choice, and he comes in and says, you know what, I'll slide over to guard because that's going to make us a better unit. And I'm going to learn from these guys and do what they do and grow within it. And they become a brotherhood there. It's fantastic to see. But their offensive line and defensive line right now, I think they've got an advantage on everybody in the National Football League.
And Coach,
Yeah.
we talked about, and we on the other side, we talked about Jalen Carter and just the impact. And I had a chance to talk to Coach Fangio around 11 o'clock on Sunday. And I saw him walking around the field and I just said, hey, I said, Jalen Carter is pretty special. And he says, yeah, he's a good player. At times he jumps out of his gap and he does his own thing. But that's just coach being coach. But at the end of the day, Jack, and like you and I, we had a discussion about him on Sunday. And we talk about the toughness, the attitude, and just the nastiness that he brought, just the mentality that he brought. And you think about Milton Williams, who plays next to him. I mean, this is a guy that had basically a career year playing next to Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith on the other side. You talk about their two linebackers having big years. Zach Bond, he's on a one-year deal, and he was the first-team All-Pro. He doesn't make that first-team All-Pro without those big horses in the middle of that defense. So a lot of props to him on both sides of the ball, making that a priority.
Yeah.
And how would you like to play in the secondary, Rod, knowing that ball's got to come out in about 2.5 to 3 maximum? You know, there's not going to be double moves. There's not going to be these 18-yard comebacks. You can sit on some things in the secondary knowing that those guys are going to pressure.
Spot on, coach. And you look at big play Clay, Darius Slay, and he had about 3 or 4 pass breakups because he could play more aggressive. He didn't have to worry about all the double moves. When he saw Puka come out of his cut, he can just go right now and try to make the play. So you're spot on with that. Absolutely.
And shout out to Jalen Carter, too, for making the big play at the biggest moment of the game. I mean, you know he's getting all that extra attention from that offensive line, but late fourth quarter, we saw Aaron Donald do it in those big playoff moments. There's always a time where if you can just get to the passer and disrupt them, and like he did, I think he sacked Stafford, right there at the end of that fourth quarter, that really screwed up that final drive. I mean, those are game-changing plays. I mean, the Rams had them on skates those last couple of series. They're going up and down the field, and they had a chance to go win the game. And Jalen Carter took that chance right away from him with that sack, really backed him up and set up that 4th and long.
And that's what, you know, that's what it's all about. That guy who's special, you don't have to make every single play, but when it needs to be made, stepping up and making it, that's the unique quality that Carter has, and it was awesome to see.
And you talk about Jalen Carter and the attention that he gets. I mean, he gets the Aaron Donald type attention. I mean, he's constantly getting double teamed. And even sometimes he gets triple teamed when you're watching this young man on tape. And a lot of young players would give up or get frustrated because they're receiving so much. And this guy continues to play hard. Yeah. He continues to fight. And just the overall nastiness. But he's a big reason why this defense has improved.
Sure is. We started with 32 teams. We are down to 4. This is what the bracket looks like right now. We are down to the Bills and the Chiefs and the AFC, who would have won it any other way, and the Washington Commanders, a team that nobody would have ever expected if you go back to the beginning of the season. A new quarterback, a new head coach. They bring in all these veterans that have done it and lived it, led by Bobby Wagner and that group, and they are ready for the Philadelphia Eagles, who will host. Rod, I'll start with you. This Final Four, what's going through your mind?
Well, you talk about the Commanders, and you said that veteran presence on the defensive side of the ball. And you're right, Jack. I mean, to get a guy of Bobby Wagner's caliber to come in and lead your defense and be that example and be that voice in the locker room, then to add Jeremy Chin and Frankie Louvu, and then go out and get Mike Sainristil and draft him and just continue to build. They've already had those 2 inside guys, Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen, but to add those other guys, Dante Fowler, a guy that played extremely well for Dan Quinn out in Dallas, just adding all those pieces together and bringing those pieces together. And I'm not even talking about on the offensive side. It's pretty special what they've been able to do on the defensive side, Coach. Yeah,
and I voted for Dan Quinn as Coach of the Year. You come to an organization that's been dysfunctional, hasn't done anything. You've got a first-year quarterback, and you bring it all together like that. And all of those players, all they talk about is the brotherhood. What's going on here? We've got this thing. This is special. And Dan Quinn has brought that. They believe. We saw them against Atlanta in Washington. We saw them in Tampa. And there was not a doubt in those guys' minds, however the game went, some way they were going to win it. And they feel the same way going to Philadelphia. Yes, Philly's good. Yes, they've got this dominant defensive line. Yes, they got a dominant offensive line. But some way, somehow, we're going to win it. And I wouldn't put it past them.
And Coach, you know what they told me, just being out there talking to them, they say, listen, all we want to do is get it in the fourth quarter. Once we get it in the fourth quarter and we have a chance to win, we believe that we can win it. And that's what they've done all year. In the fourth quarter, being able to win those close games, those tight games, being able to make the proper plays. And that's what they've been able to prove over and over again.
And who does that sound like? We had Kansas City in the opening weekend, and Travis Kelce. What's the game plan? Get it to the fourth quarter, and Pat will find a way to win it. and Washington is starting to have that same type of belief.
That's it. And Rod, you mentioned all the vets on the defensive side. Sort of under the radar, Austin Eckler starting to come to life for them. Zach Ertz, already a Super Bowl champion on the other side of this matchup. Now with Washington, he's been a presence for them. Terry McLaurin, he's played with about 12 different quarterbacks, waiting on the one and Daniels to arrive, and he has them now. You know these guys are hungry for a championship, and they got the quarterback, Rodney, right now that can bring them one.
Yeah, they got the quarterback, they got the tight end, they got the weapons. You talk about Brown, wide receiver, and Zacchaeus, all those guys. They just believe, man. And, we won a Super Bowl. We didn't have Randy Moss. When we had Randy Moss and Wes Welker, I didn't win a Super Bowl with those guys. But when I had Deion Branch and David Patton and David Givens and those guys, we won championships. We won back-to-back championships because a lot of times those guys are hungry. They're doing whatever they have to do, and they're not complaining.
Yeah, you talk about hungry, too. Terry McLaurin, he's from Indianapolis. He grew up in Indy, and I was talking to him before the Tampa game, and he was so excited. He said, I grew up watching Marvin and Reggie make plays in the playoffs. I haven't had a chance to make plays in the playoffs. I want to do something special in the playoffs. And what does he do? He rips off that screen pass and takes to the house against Tampa. That's the hunger that these guys have, and that's why they're playing so hard.
And one last point about Terry McLaurin. Got a chance to meet him early in his career. And you talk about a guy that is so humble, and you talk about a guy that had to deal with, you talk about 10 or 12 different quarterbacks. Imagine being a really good player and every other week, every other month, every other year, you're getting a different quarterback. And I'm just really ecstatic for him to have a young guy that they can bond, that they can trust one another and continue to grow. Terry McLaurin is a heck of a football player. And I think the world is really starting to see this is not his first year of production. I mean, he's been a really good receiver for a long time. Now he has a chance to be a great receiver.
Mm-hmm. And one of the conversations we always have before big games like this, we go, all right, which quarterback do you trust most? This game's going to come down to the last 3 minutes. Somebody's going to have the ball. Which quarterback do you trust most? And I'll just say right now, I trust Daniels most. And I know he's a rookie, and I know the other guy's making $50, $60 million. I got it. But if it's the last drive of this game and you know somebody's going to end up with that opportunity, who do you want to have the football between these two? Rod, I'll start with you. I see you nodding your head.
Oh, I'm taking Jaden Daniels all day because, like I talked about, no question about it, Jack, because this young guy, he's proven, and he's not hurt. He's not injured. He's not nursing anything. The kid is just playing with a level of freedom, a confidence, a spirit that it's just hard to deal with. Coach, who do you trust?
Well, I like them both, and I would trust Jalen Hurts in that game-winning situation with one thing you just said. We saw him last week in the second half really not do too much because he was definitely trying to protect that knee, and I don't know where he's going to be physically. If he's not 100%, they're going to have a tough time.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. And they got a little beat up in the secondary as well. Yep. I mean, Jacoby Dean was hurt at linebacker, but then Quinyon Mitchell got hurt. His replacement got a little banged up. I mean, that could be a legitimate factor, Coach. I see you nodding.
Yeah, no question about it. If those secondary guys can't go, we saw what happened to Detroit
Rodgers.
when they lacked a little secondary play and they couldn't hold up. It'll be the same thing. Philadelphia's going to need all their weaponry on that back end to deal with this offense.
Yeah, we saw Isaiah Rodgers struggle. I mean, he struggled. So, I mean, that's something that Cliff Kingsbury, he's going to see. I mean, he's going to put Terry McLaurin out there. He's going to rotate the guys out there. So, I mean, that's the one position that I'm really looking close at, Jack, because that young man, he's going to struggle against Washington.
And the thing about it, with Jaden Daniels, you can't really afford to help that corner because you can't use a safety over the top or to double because you got to deal with the quarterback and you got to deal with the quarterback runs and all that. So you're going to be on an island, whoever that is. And you're right. If it's an injured guy or a second team guy, look out because they can throw some weapons at you.
Yep. All right. Well, let's go to Arrowhead then. Because on the other side of this bracket, we got the Kansas City Chiefs once again, as we mentioned, and the Buffalo Bills. I mean, could this be the year? It feels almost crazy to pick against Kansas City at this point, but could this be the year, Rodney, that the Bills are ready to go beat them?
You know what? It could be, Jack, but defensively, I'm a little concerned. They have a couple guys in the secondary that's got some injuries, and Christian Benford is their starting cornerback, and Taylor Rapp their starting safety. When you talk about taking those two guys out of the secondary, I think they struggle, man. I mean, that's a lot of experience. That's a lot of playmaking ability, a lot of communication. That's huge if they're missing those two guys. And Taylor Rapp, he's been great this year.
I think we all saw this game coming and knew that it was going to come down to this. And I look at this week just like we're watching last week's game, Buffalo and Baltimore. You got two dynamic teams, two great quarterbacks who are going to make things happen. And which quarterback is going to be able to be that aggressive, go for the jugular, but take care of the football? They've both taken care of the football great this last stretch, 12, 14 weeks. But Lamar Jackson had been taking care of the ball great too. And all of a sudden you get to the big moment, you have an interception and a fumble. That to me is going to determine the game. Both these quarterbacks are going to make some plays that we're going to be shaking our head at. Who can make those plays but not turn the ball over?
Yeah, and you look at the Bills too, they've actually learned how to play any style of game that you want to play. I mean, they can go up into Detroit on the road and play and score a bunch of points. They can play in the snow against the San Francisco 49ers. I mean, whatever game you want to play, the Bills have shown they can play. This is a mentally tough team. They're a veteran squad. They got a really good, tough-minded coach. And I think the Bills can do it, but they're going to have to deal with Travis Kelce. Can they stop Travis Kelce for being that key guy?
Yeah. This is why the regular season winds up being so important, though. I mean, how many close, late, even lucky at times, last-second wins did the Chiefs end up coming home with? And then they get the 1 seed. I mean, if this game was in Buffalo this weekend on that frozen field and nobody could catch it like Mark Andrews, I might like the Bills. But the fact that it's in Kansas City, it is so dang hard to go in there and beat them because they can win any style game. Their defense, Rodney, they can win a Pacheco-style game still. I know we haven't really seen it since he's come back from that injury, but that could happen in the playoffs at some point. Maybe it could be this weekend when it happens. But, at some point this year, Rashee Rice was this emerging number one wide receiver for them. It's completely evolved who they are the whole course of this season. Kelce looked like he was on the back burner. Now he's back looking like they're number one. Like this team has just evolved throughout the entire course of this season. Rod, go ahead. So you want to get it?
And let me just say this, what you had said, they get lucky. They don't get lucky. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of preparation.
They got lucky a couple of times.
Hold on. But you got to understand, though, it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of preparation. And when you're preparing right and you're doing things right over and over, then that increases your opportunity, your chances of being so-called lucky. But, they put themselves in great position by just being prepared.
Yeah, I love what Patrick said in the post-game press conference the other day. He said, everybody looks at Coach Reed and me and Travis and Chris Jones, and we get a lot of praise. We have a great team, and we have guys who can step up and make plays. So whether it's Joe Tooney moving out to left tackle to play against Will Anderson, or whether it's, Leo Chanel blocking field goals. Everybody knows how to do it. Nico Remigio, all of a sudden now he's a threat on kickoff returns and punt returns. Where did he come from? They have guys who, whatever my job is, I'm to do it well. And at some point, my job might determine whether we win or not. And as Rodney says, they're always prepared and they're always ready.
And I'll tell you this, Coach. The one defense, you asked me, which defense out of all these defenses do you trust? It will be the Chiefs defense. George Karlaftis, Chris Jones, Trent McDuffie, and those guys. And you talk about them having that experience and just being together in these big games, winning these big games over and over again. This is the defense that I trust because I trust their defensive coordinator, Steve Spagnuolo.
Yeah, I do too. It's amazing of all the head coaches that every year somebody doesn't try to hire Steve Spagnuolo. It's like, I get that there's all these hot guys coming up, but this guy's just win Super Bowl after Super Bowl. He does it with multiple teams. He always has the great game plan. It's like, you'd think somebody would want to poach him away. Am I crazy for thinking
maybe
that?
you just keep him there. Maybe keep him there. If he keeps winning, why would you want to change?
Maybe he doesn't care about being
I promise you, Kansas City doesn't want to change. But you would think some organization would be smart enough to say, you know what, let me hire this guy and then let him hire a Cliff Kingsbury type offensive coach, and we'll be rolling. But nobody wants to do that. Everybody wants to hire the hot offensive guy, and I don't understand it. I think Dan Quinn did a pretty good job this year, right?
Yeah, and I was maybe because Steve has never been a head coach before, and he's a little older, that they don't want to give him an opportunity. But he's been around the game a long time. He's been with Andy Reid a long time. Like, he's a perfect candidate for an opportunity, I believe.
Yeah. Well, it's not every team that won't hire an offensive. And Coach Rod especially, I want to get you out of here with some good news because we do have some breaking news right now. As Rodney said about maybe 22 minutes ago, Aaron Glenn has been named the head coach of the New York Jets.
Yeah, Aaron. That's what I'm talking about.
Very good move. Very good
talking about. Hey, I couldn't be happy. Jack, I couldn't be happier for a guy. Came in with this guy in 1994. I talked about him being like, the 12th pick overall, and just getting to know him over this time, just his personality and everything, man. Coach, I could not be happier. Well-deserved. This is a guy that's been patient. He's worked his butt off, Coach, and now he gets his opportunity. This is the best move the Jets have made in a decade.
Hopefully he can do what Dan Quinn did for the Commanders, bring some just presence and bring some stability to a dysfunctional organization.
I like it. All right, we got a little breaking news on the FNIA podcast.
I love it.
That's just what we do. We knew when to schedule the podcast.
Why am I so happy for the Jets?
It could be bad news for the Patriots. It could be.
Great to see you guys, and congrats to Aaron Glenn. We'll see you guys next week. Later.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.